What is a horrible part of mental illness nobody talks about? Story 1. A lot of severely mentally ill people are unable to stay employed because of their condition, and it leads to poverty and even homelessness. Story 2. That despite the populace generally being able to talk about mental illness more openly than ever before, if you have anything beyond depression and anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, OCD, borderline, etc., people still do not understand and will often have unfair preconceived notions about you. Story 3. It negatively affects your good spells too. Like you could try to start a new career and get qualified and get your shit together because you feel good, but you know that in a few months' time you might not be able to keep it up. It's hard knowing that you're capable of more and capable of earning more, therefore having a better life, but not being able to keep it up and having to live your good times the same as your shit times because the world just doesn't let you be good half the time. Story 4. Being aware of something that you want to change, try to change, get help to change, but cannot change. All while people tell you things that are completely useless like, oh, just think positively. Shit, I never thought of that. God damn, it's been almost 40 years and nobody has ever told me to think positive. JFC, what a golden nugget of wisdom. Story 5. I think something people don't talk about enough is losing your personality and mourning that. For years I was the bubbly kid, always happy and energetic. I remember one kid told me I reminded him of a sunflower. I never forgot that. Depression took that away from me. I not only mourned the loss of my joy, I felt others mourn it. I felt bad I couldn't be the fun friend anymore, because that was my whole reputation. I felt like I lost all my credit and popularity. Every time I tried to replicate that feeling of energy, people could tell it was insincere. So now I wasn't only depressed. I felt like everybody hated me because I wasn't the sweet, bubbly kid I used to be. Story 6. For me, it was how utterly incapable I became of taking care of myself. My apartment got disgusting and I didn't even notice. TA. My love and support to all of you who understand this. It's a horrible place to be in, but I did manage to clean out my apartment once my brain chemistry had stabilized. It sucked, but was absolutely worth it. Story 7. That even when you are feeling better, the guilt and embarrassment of how you acted around people when you were unwell is still there and difficult to overcome. Even if you feel back to your old self, others have already dubbed you being crazy, and it's hard. Story 8. For me, it's how it's turned me into my own worst enemy. I am harder on myself than anyone I've encountered, even my abusive parents. Even with therapy and medication, I struggle with it. And the best part? It'll never go away. I'll hopefully learn to manage it better, maybe eliminate some of the symptoms or side effects. But it's with me. Story 9. Everyone says, get therapy, as if it's a quick, easy pill you can pop to immediately cure your problems. Let's say you actually have access to and can afford therapy, and that you happen to find a therapist who can actually help you. It still may be months or years of steady treatment before the help actually works. And sometimes it never works even if everything lines up right. Story 10. I've been trying various antidepressants since the mid-00s with no response. I scraped together the money to get ketamine. I'm actually sitting in one of the appointments right now. We're about to get out, and it's not doing anything. My doctor says that we are going to need to look at stimulation therapies like electroshock and fucking magnets. I asked her, what do we do if we try those and there's still no improvement? I was told it's not good to have such a bleak outlook and something's gotta work. Nobody will tell me what the fuck I'm supposed to do if every single thing fails. At what point am I just allowed to give up already? Story 11. 3 things. The grief you feel when you lose someone to serious mental illness. It never goes away. I raised a beautiful kid. Funny, handsome, charming, so very outgoing. Not great in school, but man, what a kid. Spent 20 years raising that boy and being genuinely excited to see who he would become in life, and all of that is gone. The schizophrenia and delusions stole all of that away. He's still there physically, but he can't talk without getting upset about a string of delusions and hallucinations that just aren't real. It's like my son died and was replaced by this broken imposter. Except instead of grieving the loss of a family member dying and slowly adjusting to life without their light, this imposter calls in the middle of the night screaming about giant spiders chasing him. I've lost the person he was going to be, the young man he was growing into. It's nearly impossible to have any real relationship with him outside of just managing crisis after crisis after crisis, one eviction after another. What to do with him? Where to find him the help he needs? Can we finally convince him to stay on his meds that help control the anger? No parenting manual ever prepared me for this. Maybe one day a new medication will help. Maybe one day he'll be motivated to try some new treatment or group home. Maybe someday he'll get better. Hope is really hard to hang on to. Anosognosia. My son does not believe he's ill. He refuses all treatment. Anosognosia is a bitch. It's not denial of an illness. It is a complete lack of recognition that there is even a problem. Lack of insight into his own illness. All of his delusions are 100% real to him, no matter how outlandish they are. If you challenge them, he gets angry and insulting, screaming that you're the crazy one because you have never seen the aliens that are right there in front of you. It's like if someone broke their arm and every time you point out their arm is broken, they get angry at you for insulting them because their arm is just fine. The absolute nightmare of trying to get someone help for a serious illness when that person doesn't understand they need the help and all of the social services are full or out of money or space or whatever. Everyone can see how debilitated my son is, but unless he is capable of asking for help on his own, no help is really available. He's not violent enough to be committed. He's too disabled to really make his own choices about care, but unless he willingly participates in seeking care, there is nothing except homelessness and a short, brutal life for someone as seriously mentally ill as he is. I just became his permanent guardian in order to help him get care. It was expensive and challenging and nothing I ever wanted to do, but it was either become his guardian or watch this beautiful kid that I raised die in the street like an animal, like thousands do every year. Like I said, hope is really hard to hang on to. Story 12. I think it's important that people are told that not every mental health provider's gonna be a good one, or care, and that you have zero obligation to stick with a bad provider because that's only going to cause you more pain, and you deserve better. This is especially important to know so you can explain it to friends and family who don't get it. It's not just you being picky. Even so, you're allowed to be picky with who you let try and help you with your health. Yeah? Also, the more severe your mental health is, the harder it is for even the best-intentioned people to handle it all. One of the reasons it's crucial to create an entire network of support is because you can literally burn people out with your mental health struggles. Not because they don't care either. It's just so much that it begins bringing down their own mental health. I've definitely lost friends in the past for this reason, but I didn't know about creating a support network. Even if I did, I had zero resources available to me, so I wouldn't have known how to start creating one. Instead, I decided that opening up was bad, which was absolutely not the right course of action to take. RIP. Also, people who have the same diagnosis as you but who have a less severe version of it. They can be rude and judgmental too, because they forget that not everyone who has said diagnosis has it exactly the way they do. It's far more complicated than that. And it's also good to remind yourself of that because I know no one who struggles with mental illness wants to purposely put someone in that position. Story 13. It's expensive. It's hard to find a good care provider with up-to-date information. It's lonely. People in your life often don't want to hear about it and seem to assume it's all hunky-dory once you get help, and anything past that point can be seen as malingering, as in everything is better, good, now be happy, normal. Worst is if you have super religious people in your life who want to cure you with Jesus or prayer or whatever. Well, wishes are fine, but witnessing is obnoxious. Story 14. That there's a huge difference in how we treat people with mental illness when it harms more than just the individual who suffers from it. This extends to neurological differences too, like autism or ADHD. A lot of the people we ridicule online for being weird or making bad decisions are mentally ill, neurodivergent, from random ass people recorded in public freakouts to celebrities. Calling them crazy, saying they're entitled or laughing at them helps nobody. And it really shows how quickly we can change our minds on these things. Story 15. People throw around the word trauma all the time in a joking manner. And as a person with PTSD, it sucks, hearing people make light of it while vilifying you for actually behaving like a person who has experienced real trauma. Like I am significantly less fun to be around and friendly than I was before, and internet-brained dorks talking about how all their trauma just made them funnier blows. Story 16. That it can affect anyone. I've dealt with severe OCD for 28 years and severe depression for 15. I've had daily suicidal thoughts. My mom tried to help, but she passed of cancer 8 years ago. My dad never understood and was sometimes ignorant, but always supported me and never gave up on me nonetheless. I'd still get lectures, though, about moving on. All of a sudden this winter, my poor dad was unfortunately hit with depression and anxiety like a bag of bricks. He's a man's man, the last person you'd expect. I didn't realize it was as bad as it was, but his girlfriend told me. Yesterday, she woke me up and said we were on suicide watch. She'd hidden the keys to his hunting guns. When I sat with him, he started to wail and apologize. I've never seen anyone like that. It was a complete mental breakdown. I later found out he'd written a suicide note but burned it. We got him into the truck, and I drove him 1.5 hours to the mental health hospital. He was admitted and has called me twice to see if I got home okay, to talk and to thank me. He's doing better, thankfully. The doctor told me she's glad I brought him in and that he was certifiable under the Mental Health Act. All the way there, he begged me to turn around and take him home. We haven't told my physically disabled and mentally delayed sibling, who my dad looked after until he was 65. They now live in a home. I also wish someone had driven me there when I was at my worst. My dad is pretty well off, has a nice house and a vacation trailer. He hunts, fishes, and goes away regularly. Story 17. Balancing side effects versus benefits for medication, then not being taken seriously when you complain about side effects. I take Prozac for anxiety and depression. The only reason I continue to take it is because it has been the only thing to even touch the anxiety, which can be crippling. But apparently, my psychiatrist doesn't believe that you can gain weight on Prozac, nor does he believe it can cause insomnia. I've had both of these side effects both times I've taken Prozac, 15 years apart. It's like screaming into the void sometimes. Story 18. Well-intentioned people who invalidate people's real problems and treat mental illness as a cage. Unless it has swung back, the DSM recognized temporary periods of depression as depression. For example, depressive symptoms after losing a loved one. I've seen people post about how you're not allowed to call yourself depressed when you're just sad. You don't have to live in a lifelong cage of depression. If you move past it, the depression you experienced isn't less valid. If you're feeling those extremes, or not feeling at all, after something really bad happens, depression is still real and psychologically recognized. You're not less of a person or appropriating mental health issues for experiencing that. Story 19. That none actually can help you through it. No matter how much you talk to others about your problems, they always will give you the same answer. Take meds or go to therapy. All the therapists I ever had never were able to actually do anything significant for me. Maybe it's just a me problem, but man, I'm still go get through tons of shit on a daily basis, living with a war going on in my head, too anxious to go do things. Story 20. How even doctors, like a primary care doctor, will hold the stigma of you disclosing a diagnosis. Why are you taking this? Is it schizophrenia? Yeah, I can't prescribe any pain medications. Oh, I know you didn't ask for some. I just want to be clear. Or, why are you taking this? Is it for schizophrenia? Or, why did you take this? Why aren't you taking it anymore? You can't just stop this. You didn't just stop it? Can you sign this? Oh, it just releases medical records I may need. All of these things have been said to me by doctors. No, I'm not schizophrenic, but if I was, as all people do, including schizophrenic people, and they deserve medical care that has nothing to do with mental health. One of those times I had walking fucking pneumonia. Like, hey, fuckface, I know you feel like a god, a judgmental god and all, but could you listen to my lungs and break out your holy pen and sacred paper and get to writing scripts for the pneumonia? Story 21. I have a lot of demons brought on by several brain injuries. My main issue at the moment is schizoid personality disorder. Trying to act normally when every atom in your body is screaming to leave a situation. You have to ignore it, but it makes things so awkward. You're talking to yourself, telling yourself to calm down while also trying to have a conversation or interact normally, and you just feel blinded and deaf because of all the stimulation, anxiety, and self-doubt. Story 22. That if you get lucky to be on meds and get stable, it's not sustainable. Higher and higher doses over the years to keep you even keel. Don't get me wrong, some people can stay at one dose for a long time, if not forever. They are the outliers. After a while, you learn those same meds are making you worse because you are treating the effect and not the cause, like a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. Been off meds for 2 months and it's been rough, but I know in the long run I will be even better than before. Blessings to all of you in the struggle. Story 23. That when you're suicidal and dying for help, begging God to help you, guide you, save you, people will still tell you to get help, because that's all anybody really can say. And when you go for help, you go to 5 different doctors. None of them agree on diagnosis or treatment and prescribe multiple different conflicting medicines that should fix your chemistry. But the problem isn't your chemistry. It's your environment and society's infatuation with living, fast-dying young and making a profit. And there's no help for that part. Story 24. That you really don't know what it's like until it happens to you. It's easy to read about the effects of certain illnesses, but to experience them is something else. That's what our sapience is. Our experience is our own, and no one will understand how you feel when you tell them how you experience life. How do you get someone to understand experiential symptoms, like how the world is dark and veiled even when your eyes are wide open? How your favorite food doesn't bring you pleasure even though it physically tastes good? How even when you feel numb to pain or sadness, there's a sinking feeling in your chest that makes everything unbearable? Story 25. Inpatient mental health care is a traumatic experience. The experience I had included no actual mental health care. I was simply locked up with other vulnerable people who were all very much in need of comprehensive therapy and help. We were ignored all day long and left to rot in front of cable television for the entire day. We didn't have adequate bedding and we were prescribed a wild array of drugs they could bill to my insurance for dispensing to me, drugs that I was required to consume if I had any hope of getting out of there. A nurse practitioner who identified himself as a psychiatrist spent roughly 1 minute a day, 5 days a week with each of us in order to maintain our prescriptions. He had no interest in listening to any of us. We were allowed out into a tiny courtyard for 30 minutes every other day, except on weekends. Some of us had the privilege of going down to the cafeteria to eat, while others were served cold food that had been left out in unsafe temperatures. Most weekdays there was one 45-minute group therapy session which was not therapeutic at all. I committed myself voluntarily. When I asked to leave, I was put on a 5-day hold for 7 days. Some staff were kind, but none were receptive to our needs. In fairness to them, they were understaffed and overworked. When I finally got out and sought actual mental health care, I had to work through that fresh trauma with my therapist and in a group therapy setting, and then we could start working on the trauma that caused me to seek inpatient care in the first place. My primary care took me off all of those drugs and was genuinely furious that they prescribed me such nonsense. Now I'm on one drug which is moderately helpful. Inpatient mental health care is not only not health care, it's traumatic and neglectful.